Yeah, I guess it's actually the
Let us pray. As Canadians and as Albertans, we give thanks for the precious gifts of freedom and peace which we enjoy. As members of this Legislative Assembly, we rededicate ourselves to the valued traditions of parliamentary democracy as a means of serving both our province and our country. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions.
Tabor Warner petition? Guess not.
Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife.
Request leave to introduce Bill 27, being the Fisheries Alberta Act. This being a money bill, His Honor, the Lieutenant Governor, has been informed of this bill and recommends it to the Assembly. This bill formalizes the fisheries provisions currently contained in agreements between the federal government and includes current Fish Marketing Act and its provisions. And Bill 27 also provides for a clear delineation of federal and Alberta jurisdiction on fisheries-related matters. It's my pleasure to introduce Bill 27, the Fisheries Alberta Act, for its first reading.
Having heard the request for first reading to Bill 27, those in favor please say aye. Aye. Opposed please say no. Carried.
Bill number 27, Fisheries Alberta Act, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Fjordbottom, is now read a first time.
Edmonton Goldbar.
I request leave to introduce Bill 274, the Ambulance Services Amendment Act. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this act is to ensure that when a physician recommends a non-admitted patient be transferred to another facility because the originating hospital is unable to provide adequate medical treatment, the minister will bear the cost of such transfers.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Goldbar has moved first reading of Bill 274, Ambulance Services Amendment Act. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 274, Ambulance Services Amendment Act, introduced by the Honourable Member Mrs. Hughes, is now read a first time.
Member for Edmonton Goldbar.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill 290. That's 290, the Individual Rights Protection Act. Mr. Speaker, this bill would add sexual orientation as a category of prohibited discrimination in respect of employment, accommodation, and access to public facilities.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Goldbar has moved first reading of Bill 290, Individuals' Rights Protection Amendment Act number 2. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 290, Individuals' Rights Protection Amendment Act number 2, introduced by the honourable member Mrs. Hughes, is now read a first time.
Edmonton Goldbar.
Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill 292, the Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act. Mr. Speaker, this amendment is to allow for private clinics and agencies to bill the healthcare insurance plan for counseling and treatment services to family violence abusers and victims.
The honourable member for Edmonton Goldbar has further moved for first reading Bill 290, Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 292, Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act, introduced by the honourable member Mrs. Hughes, is now read a first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request leave to introduce Bill number 288, the Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act. The purpose of this amendment is to extend Alberta healthcare coverage to include services and supplies needed for the treatment of diabetes.
The honourable member for Edmonton Glengarry has moved first reading to Bill 288, Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 288, Alberta Healthcare Insurance Amendment Act, introduced by the honourable member Mr. Decor, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Family and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to table the annual report of the Department of Family and Social Services, which covers the fiscal year ending March 31st, 1990. I might mention, Mr. Speaker, that I do so jointly with my colleague, the Honourable Mr. Brassard, who during this period of time covered by this report was the Associate Minister of Family and Social Services. Mr. Speaker, also at this time, as the Acting Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunications, I wish to table public documents relating to the sale of Novotel Communications Limited's primary business units. The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, is at this hour speaking publicly in the City of Calgary to this issue and was most anxious for the members of the Legislative Assembly to have this current information. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, the Minister will be here tomorrow morning to present his estimates and looks forward to responding to any questions that the Minister...
Sorry, it's just a tabling. Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table a letter which I have written to the Auditor General. This letter, Mr. Speaker, requests the Auditor General to perform a special duty under Section 17.2 of the Auditor General Act. I won't go into details, Mr. Speaker, but basically the special duty is to review the history of Novotel and to report publicly on it.
Additional.
Introduction of special guest.
Minister of Economic Development and Trade, followed by the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, it's my pleasure, sir, to introduce to you and through you the father of one of our hard-working pages in the Legislative Assembly, the page namely Craig Gromniski. The guest is seated in your gallery, Mr. Speaker, and I would ask Mr. Barry Gromniski to rise and receive the warm welcome of this Legislative Assembly.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure today to welcome two out-of-province guests, Joyce and Mel Hodgins from Belleville, Ontario. This is Joyce's first visit to beautiful Alberta. Of course, their first visit to the legislature. Joyce happens to be the sister of my Executive Secretary, Shirley Campbell Pierce. They're in the public gallery. I ask them to stand and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Member for Edmonton Centre, followed by Drayton Valley.
Mr. Speaker, in the in the public gallery today are 12 visitors from the YMCA's Option for Adults program in Edmonton Center. They're here with their leaders Gary Ingram and Lois Kathnelson. I'd ask that they now please rise and receive the welcome of the members here today.
Drayton Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce to you and through you to the Legislative Assembly 14 bright students from the Tomahawk School in the constituency of Drayton Valley, and they're accompanied today by 2 teachers, Mrs. Jane Zander and Mrs. Mary Sullivan, and accompanied as well by the bus driver, Mr. Kevin Gers. I would ask that they rise and receive the warm traditional welcome of this House, and I'm sorry I missed your photograph session. Please rise.
Minister of Labor.
Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the members of the legislature 84 visitors from the A.E. Cross Junior High School in Calgary West. With them as teachers and group leaders are Art Hansen, Marie White, Marguerite Boisjoli, Cindy Hubert, Helen Clark, and Jim Schell, and ask all of the members of the legislature to extend a warm welcome in the traditional manner and ask the students please to rise to accept them.
Ministerial statements.
Tourism, Parks, and Recreation.
Mr. Speaker, as Minister responsible for recreation, I am pleased to announce that Canada's biggest national celebration of active living begins on May 22nd. Canada's official Fit Week runs May 22nd to the 31st and will involve over 900,000 Albertans in 10 programs. We are of mind that this Fit Week is every week and should include every Albertan. Alberta Tourism, Parks and Recreation is committed to the well-being of Albertans. The active living movement and Canada's Fit Week are excellent examples of that movement. Leisure as an industry is very important to this province, generating over $6 billion annually in economic benefits. Aside from the obvious personnel benefits of healthy, active lifestyle, physically fit people on average need less medical care. A decrease in the use of medical services would directly result in a decrease in medical costs for taxpayers. I know an 80-year-old gent who has only spent 1 day of his life in hospital. While many factors determine an individual's medical needs, I am certain that his dedication to staying fit and active has contributed significantly to his nearly perfect record of health. This is a story that we would all like to hear more often about more Albertans, and Fit Week is a step in this direction. If you haven't already, you can get a start on the path to your active lifestyle by joining your fellow Canadians on Friday, May 22nd for Sneaker Day. Lace up your sneakers and take a walk for the health of it. Fit Week is full of activities that will pique your interest, including an active living break at noon on Wednesday, May 27th in the North Amphitheater of the Legislative Grounds. And I encourage you to visit your constituencies and participate in the numerous Fit Week activities happening throughout the province. So swap your suits for sweats and slip on your sneakers and join us in celebrating the Canada's 10th annual Fit Week.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I take it we're all for Fitness Week. It'd be hard to be against that. I think there's an important point as we move towards looking at the Health Minister's budget. I think one of the biggest areas that we could save money is in the whole area of prevention. Of course, physical fitness is one of that, and that's going to take a massive amount of education in terms of all our parts in the legislature. But in honor of Fitness Week, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to challenge the Premier to a game of golf. I may challenge the Boomer to a road race, but I think rather than that, I'll play squash with a member from Edmonton Kingsway. Thank you.
Question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about Novotel to one of those shrewd business people, the treasurer over there, Mr. Speaker. Had a quick look at this brilliant document, Mr. Speaker, but I find that this whole area has been sort of a comedy of errors. This government's brand of privatization, sell off the profit-making to private investors, keep the worst of it for the taxpayers of Alberta so we can lose millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. We must remember that this government botched the sale of TELUS when it released erroneous information about the financial state of Novotel in the sales prospectus. And frankly, taxpayers are still picking up the bill, Mr. Speaker. Now, to the treasurer, that person who understands business, Mr. Speaker, I see that, you know, we have roughly possible loss. We don't know yet because we haven't got all the figures in, but could be up to $840 million. Mr. Speaker, it looks in a quick glance so that they've made a great sale here.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to get at least $76 million back, Mr. Speaker. Now, my question is to the treasurer. If my figures are wrong in the quick analysis, I'm sure he'd be glad to straighten this out, but will the treasurer tell us, Albertans and us in the legislature, the extent of losses Novotel has cost the taxpayers? All of them, Mr. Speaker.
Let's hear it.
Speaker, you heard my honorable colleague, the Acting Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunication, advise the Assembly when he tabled the full documentation on the Novotel transaction and sale that my colleague, the Minister, will be back tomorrow. He is now in Calgary along with Novotel, making public and fully disclosing all the information surrounding this issue. But to ensure that all members of the legislature had it, my colleague tabled it here today in the House. I must, Mr. Speaker, be guided by the rules which I think guide the government. That is to say, with respect to the principles of the transaction and talking about the strengths of the transaction for Alberta's telecommunication industry, I will leave most of that to my colleague, the Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunication, and I will deal only today with the facts which have been disclosed on the financial side. And as the documentation shows, Mr. Speaker, it's our best estimate today, and we're making this full disclosure up front with the people of Alberta, that our estimate of the loss, total loss to the government of Alberta on the Novotel transaction will be of the order of $566 million. And that's the full provision, Mr. Speaker, for the write-off of any receivables which surround the sale of systems in the United States market. Good for you.
Mr. Speaker, very, very interesting. If that's their estimate, Mr. Speaker, knowing this treasurer, it's probably much higher. That's the way it works, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
And I find it insulting that we've been asking questions about Novotel
Since day one.
since day one, and this announcement is not in the legislature, where the minister should be here, Mr.
Here,
Speaker.
here.
And it's wrong, fundamentally wrong. But, Mr. Speaker, $566 million that the treasurer acknowledges, I notice that of this money that they're supposedly getting, $20 million is a deferred payment, Mr. Speaker. So we may not even get that. So we may not even be getting what it's worth. Fire sale, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
My question then to the treasurer is simply this. Is $566 million, what does that do to his budget projections this year? Wrong again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, it does nothing to the 92-93 budget forecast.
Mr. Speaker, so we're just going to postpone the debt. So the $566 million, snap, it's not there, Mr. Speaker. Will the treasurer then tell us how it is that how we're going to pay for this $566 million? Will you please tell us that?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, the member from Norwood is confusing the impact and deficit and the call upon the Treasury to make a payment. Two separate, entirely different and distinct concepts in the business world. First of all, let me make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, that the $566 million that we addressed already with respect to the impact in this budget, that is to say that the impact in the 92-93 forecasts that are now before the House in terms of the debate will be very nominal. In fact, hardly anything at all. There may be some additional charges for interest, but nothing very significant. And the reason for that is, Mr. Speaker, that all members in the public accounts were tabled. The 91 year-end, for example, will show that already we've recognized well over $350 million worth of losses on the consolidated statements.
and that is already disclosed here in the Legislative Assembly. All members, if they want to take the time and effort to look at it, would find that that's already been disclosed. And the member of the opposition parties could use their $1.5 million of research money to do just that. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, the additional losses between the 300 or so that's been recognized and the 566, which unfortunately we have to recognize today, will be taken in the year ended March 31st, 92. I've already revealed to the House and discussed fully, Mr. Speaker, the fact that in concert with the auditor and accepting his recommendations as to how to account for these losses, that in fact they will show up in the March 31st, 92 financial statements of the province and will not at all impact on the 92-93 budget which we presented. And this is in accordance with the audit agreement. It satisfies his test, Mr. Speaker, and certainly, as the Premier has noted when he tabled a letter to Mr. Salmon, the auditor of the Legislative Assembly, the Governor of Alberta, that we have asked him specifically, Mr. Speaker, in his outline of general duties, that he account fully for both the total amount of losses, the impact on the financial position of the province of Alberta, the timing of those losses, and the amount of losses as well. So, Mr. Speaker, what we have done is taken this question of how to deal with the disclosure to ensure that the people of Alberta have full information about this and put it in the hands of an independent person, the Auditor General, and that public report will be available to all Albertans as soon as it's ready.
Second main question, Leader. Second main question, please. Thank you.
Treasurer, Mr. Speaker. This treasurer has a lot to talk about. The biggest mismanagement in the history of Alberta, Mr. Speaker, coming from this government, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, just to continue along the same line, the legacy of this government, bungle, 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 Mr. Speaker. Now, with the fiasco like Novotel on its hands, Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder that credit agencies have downgraded the debt rating of Alberta to AA2 from a AA1, Mr. Speaker. Now, this is the supreme irony, Mr. Speaker, since the provincial treasurer likes to boast about Alberta, how much better it is than all the other provinces in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Many is the time, Mr. Speaker, that this treasurer has talked about New Democrat governments in other provinces instead of answering questions about Alberta's finances. He can't do that any longer, Mr. Speaker. My question is this to the treasurer. How can this provincial treasurer justify fiscal policies that have crippled this province's debt rating so that it is now lower than that of British Columbia, well run by the New Democrats, I might add, Mr. Speaker?
Well, the increased taxes, it's still the overflow from the other.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Moody's did downgrade the province of Alberta to the second best rating in Canada. Well, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, being second best doesn't put you in an enviable position, I agree, but the member from Norwich knows what it's like being second best.
Hey, nice going. Here.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry. I shouldn't make light of a serious matter. We in the government obviously consider this to be a very serious matter. But you know, Mr. Speaker, this is as much a message to Albertans as it is to the government. And to the extent that we have already said in this budget message, Mr. Speaker, that Albertans have to do a better job of dealing with the size of government expenditures. And what Moody's said in their speaker is quite interesting, and I would only take 1 second to review what Moody's did say. And that is to say that they were actually very complimentary of the way in which we manage the expenditures of the province of Alberta and forecast very clearly that we had expenditures under control. And we have said this time and time again in our budget, that in fact the one thing that we are responsible for and do well is manage our expenditures. This past year, Mr. Speaker, as all Albertans know, the deficit of Alberta was driven by the second price shock in 5 years in our oil and gas sector, with the price of natural gas falling as rapidly and as deeply as the price of oil did in 86, 87. And accordingly, our deficit moved at the same rate. Speaker, that was outside of control of the government. The people of Alberta know that. And now with this adjustment in our rating, Mr. Speaker, essentially in terms of the capital market, it has almost no impact on our ability to borrow. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, I would dare to say today that we will borrow as cheaply in the capital markets of the world of any other borrower, any other provincial borrower in the province, in the Canada, and second only to the Canada in terms of the rate that we receive in all capital markets. So the impact is essentially nominal.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Attitude. Mr. Speaker. Effectively nominal. We get knocked on the world markets and Treasurer says, what, me worry, Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, right.
I'll tell him he won't be second best. You're going to be third best after the next election, Mr. Speaker.
Johnson.
But, Mr. Speaker, this is typical. This is my question. It's typical of this government. It's now Albertans' fault.
Yeah.
Everybody else's fault, but this government's and this Treasurer's, Mr. Speaker. And that's what's fundamentally wrong with this government. My question to the Treasurer is simply falling from this. How does the provincial treasurer justify to taxpayers wasting millions of dollars in interest payments to bankers through his total mismanagement of the economy, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, the member from Norwood has given the government and the treasurer, for that matter, much more responsibility than probably is fully here. That is to say, the management of the economy. Well, that simply speaks to his mindset. The socialist mindset would be one where they would manage the economy. We're doing quite differently, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, we're not taxing Albertans because we believe that the money should be in the hands of Albertans, Mr. Speaker, not in the hands of government. And that's why we maintain the lowest possible tax regime of any province in Canada. Now, let me make it very clear what I said about borrowing in the capital markets. To this day, Mr. Speaker, Alberta has the best record of any province in Canada in terms of our access to capital markets. We borrow at the cheapest rate of any province in Canada, and to some extent, some of our bonds, in fact, trade cheaper at a better price than, in fact, the government of Canada does in the United States market in particular. This adjustment, Mr. Speaker, is not taken lightly, as I've said. It is, in fact, what's going to happen to all provinces across Canada if they don't deal with this collective responsibility for dealing with debt. And I've said that time and time again, that the market will eventually discipline those provinces who don't pay heed to the deficits are rising too large in Canada. And if I look at the other provinces across Canada, Mr. Speaker, I see that we're now exactly equal to Ontario, second only to BC, but where I have concern is about those provinces which are teetering on the A to B+. Those provinces are in some difficulty. That is not the case in Alberta. I can assure Albertans that our borrowing in the markets of around the world, London, New York, and Toronto, in fact, will be at the cheapest rate of any province in Canada. That means that we will borrow money with a premium above Government of Canada treasuries, which will be unmatched in Canada.
Here, here.
This is like waving at the Titanic with the treasurer talking the way he is, Mr. Speaker. We have serious problems. 8 consecutive deficits. Right. Over $15 billion in debt, and the treasurer says, what me worry, Mr. Speaker?
Alfred E.
Now,
Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, I'd point out to the treasurer as he talks about other provinces, this is one of the few provinces where this year's deficit will be higher than last. Other provinces are doing something about, unlike this treasurer, Mr. Speaker. My final question to the treasurer is simply this. Given the abysmal record of the treasurer, why should Albertans believe anything this treasurer says, Mr. Speaker?
You got it now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we backed up our position with real action. We don't just live in the world of words and abstract ideas that, in fact, the socialist parties across the way do. What we said to Albertans is the following, that this year, Mr. Speaker, we had two kinds of problems. The first problem we had was one of the economy, driven by very deep recessions in the United States and in some parts of Canada. The sense of confidence was waning even here in Alberta, and Albertans were concerned about their jobs and the economy of this province. And we wanted to ensure that we shared that view with Albertans, and we put in place measures which protected their interests in the longer term. And that clear message, Mr. Speaker, was in the form of a tax cut. A tax cut, Mr. Speaker, where in fact all provinces other than Alberta have had tax increases. Now, what they have done, Mr. Speaker, is captured not just the federal tax, which Mr. Mazinkowski, tax reduction Mr. Mazinkowski gave to all Canadians. They have added on to it as well, Mr. Speaker. And to instill this sense of confidence, to ensure that Albertans have a future that will in fact generate new jobs and new investment right here in this province, which is the meaningful kind of decisions that we need here in this province, we cut the taxes. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we identified very clearly in the budget the fact that we did have a large deficit. It was of growing concern to us in Alberta as well, and we were taking major steps by way of a plan, by way of consultation, and by way of remedial action to correct, in fact, that problem. And within the next few days, Mr. Speaker, I, in fact, will be introducing legislation which will strictly discipline the government so that its expenditure program will be controlled by spending limits which go from 2.5% to 2%. All in all, Mr. Speaker, that's the...
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Order, please. Order. Edmonton Glengarry on behalf of the Liberal Party.
It's like, Mr. Speaker, it's like slapping your hand, your own hand. We're going to introduce legislation to control our spending. How ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, Alberta's financial position continues to deteriorate. Moody's has downgraded us, and they've told Albertans what Albertans have known for some time, and that is that Alberta's debt continues to grow, and because it grows, the ratings will go down and the taxpayers will pay more. My first question to the Treasurer is this. This is now extreme danger time, as I see it, Mr. Treasurer. Is the Treasurer going to continue his course, his plan of more deficits and more debt for Albertans?
Speaker, I dealt fully this question from the member from Norwood already.
Mr. Speaker, that's the kind of cavalier, flippant arrogance that we've seen since 1986 from this Treasurer. And no wonder Alberta's in the jam that it's in. Mr. Speaker, a number of suggestions, positive suggestions, have been made by members of the opposition. Our party has suggested expanding the power of the Auditor General to cut the fat out of the government civil service. We've suggested to improve the budget review process. When, Mr. Treasurer, are you going to take up these positive suggestions and get your mess under control?
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that we certainly accept all ideas and all suggestions for ways in which we can improve the management of the government of Alberta. But it is clear in reading Moody's comments that they understand fully that we are out front in terms of adjustments to our expenditure control, whether it's by way of program review, whether it's value for taxpayers' dollars, whether it's all those efficiency studies which come quickly to the minds of those people across the way. We have done all those, Mr. Speaker, over the past 5 years. And as I said before, we have our expenditures under control. This deficit, Mr. Speaker, was generated by a sharp drop in the price of energy. Now, we have a different view than the member from Glengarry. The member from Glengarry is clearly on record, Mr. and Mrs. Alberta, of recommending a sales tax for Albertans to solve that problem. Let it never be said, Mr. Speaker, that this government would recommend that folly, that foolish position, Mr. Speaker. Never, never, never.
You gotta tell the truth, Dick.
Mr. Speaker, what was the wisdom that was given to us by the Premier some short time ago? When you have no argument, you start to flutter and stutter, and that's exactly what we're seeing happening from the Treasurer. Mr. Speaker, the deficit situation, the debt situation is now so serious and so extreme, I don't think that the Treasurer and the Getty government can solve the deep problem. Will the Treasurer admit failure, like he admitted failure when he brought down his last budget, admit failure and say, I can't do it, we can't do it, let's call in outside experts, let's get a plan to control expenditures and a plan to pay down debt. Will he do that? Doom and gloom.
I've said time and time again that we accept all sorts of advice, and as a matter of fact, last night I was in Calgary, a member from Calgary Glenmore, talking to the good people in Calgary about how we can improve the way in which our budget process moves, suggestions for a way in which we can focus our expenditures, and to ensure that the best level of services flow to Albertans. But unlike the member from Glengarry and his party, we do not believe that sales tax for Albertans is the way to go. Now, I know that the member from Glengarry goes into a set of frenzy every time he has to make serious choices like 3 pizza toppings out of 4, but this is not the kind of direction that Alberta would take. We would not, Mr. Speaker, and I want to make it very clear that this government would not bring in place a sales tax to confiscate those low-income Albertans important dollars. We believe in putting dollars back in their pockets, Mr. Speaker, and that's the kind of policy we advocate. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, let's not be among the doom and gloomers across the way who see only the gray clouds, who have no view of the future, no understanding of the strength of this province, because I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that there's one thing that's true about this province. We have control over the natural resources. We have the strong exports of natural gas.
Excuse me, Honorable Provincial Treasurer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Order. Order. Calgary Fish Creek, followed by Edmonton Jasper Place.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's safe to say that many of our constituents are encouraged by the apparent progress that's being made by the premiers and the intergovernmental affairs ministers with respect to constitutional reform. I think it's also safe to say, though, that that encouragement is somewhat dampened by the fact of Quebec's absence from those discussions and from those negotiations. And I'm wondering if the Premier can advise the Assembly if any initiatives are now underway to re-involve Quebec in the process so that we might get the benefit, the much-needed benefit of their input and their concurrence.
Mr. Speaker, it is valuable that over the years there has been a special intergovernmental relationship developed between the government and province of Quebec and the government and province of Alberta. We have been able to maintain close communications, even though, and we regret this, the government of Quebec is not participating at the table on constitutional discussions. When Premier Bourassa was here just recently, I urged him to once again come to the table to discuss these matters because he brings, of course, a knowledge and experience that would be very helpful. But our Deputy Premier and Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs has struck a special relationship with the Quebec Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, and I'm pleased to say that over the years I've been able to establish a friendship, which is a real friendship, not just a government relationship, with Premier Bourassa. And I hope if we continue talking through these lines of communications, it will be much healthier for the future of Canada, and we will be able to always be able to judge Quebec's position, their thinking, as these constitutional matters proceed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in view of the progress that is being made with respect to constitutional reform discussions and in view of these important interpersonal relationships to which the Premier has just referred, can the Premier assess for the members today to what extent the threat to Canadian unity is now subsiding?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is always a matter for judgment, but we have had very intensive discussions at the ministerial level. They're going on right now as we speak here in Alberta. And having just had the meeting with Premier Bourassa and having just come from a meeting with 6 leaders from the West, I am starting to be encouraged that the issue of a threat to Canadian unity is lessening, and lessening dramatically. So, Mr. Speaker, I would think all members of the legislature and people of Alberta would be pleased that on our #1 priority of the unity of our country, that the threat is lessening. I would, though, counter that to some extent with my concern, deep concern still, that the needs of Western Canada, particularly our province, and the desires of the people of Alberta in achieving a Triple E Senate still remains a priority we have not yet achieved, but must be very firm in seeking it.
Edmonton Jasper Place, followed by Calgary Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, when I asked the Environment Minister last week about the recommendations of the federal assessment of the Old Man Dam, he asked for more time to study them. Today he was observed in a news conference peddling the same tired old Tory line that everything's fine, it's all been taken care of, and there's nothing to worry about. Well, this group found, as any other group would, that it ain't fine, that in fact there's a massive failure on the part of the province to mitigate major environmental impacts, especially those affecting fish, wildlife, and riparian ecosystems. Yeah, you've been busted, every last one of you. You know, this report says you didn't do the job. And,
order, please. Honorable member, for just half a moment, sir. Honorable members, let's not all of us get involved in this back chat while we're in question period. Let's now have the question and be less argumentative, please.
Well, let's cut away the rhetoric and ask the minister if he has now decided to accept recommendation number 3 to create an environmental management committee and give it full authority to mitigate and continue mitigating the major environmental impacts, and recommendation 4, to conclude an agreement with the Piegan Nation.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, it's not my report. We didn't ask for this report. We didn't ask for this report. You know why, Mr. Speaker? And I'm going to tell you why, Mr. Speaker. The reason we didn't ask for this report because prior to the construction of this dam, full and intensive environmental impact studies were carried out. Studies that were submitted to the federal government. Studies that the federal government said are okay with us. And the federal government signed off on that dam. They signed off. They said what you have done is proper, is correct. It was the result of a federal court decision that the ERP panel, the Environmental Assessment Review Panel, was struck and made these recommendations to the federal government. They didn't make these recommendations to us, Mr. Speaker. They made the recommendations to the federal government. In answer to the honourable member's question, we will be discussing with the federal government next week how these recommendations are going to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, they love the comfortable lives, but fortunately we have courts in this country, and the courts have found quite otherwise. Now, I understood that the members of the government had the audacity to refer to this report as technically adolescent. This coming from a group of juvenile delinquents who borrowed my daughter's heritage to build a dam without looking into the environmental impacts.
Right, well said.
Then they're going to borrow more money and have a party to celebrate it. So I'd like to ask how he can stand here and wash his hands of these recommendations when he knows that failure to meet them means that this dam will be decommissioned and the $500 million will be wasted.
Good. First of all, I have to remind the honourable member again, it is not our report. It's the federal government's report. The federal government will have to react to the recommendations. We will discuss with the federal government how they plan to react to the recommendations. We will have those discussions over a period of time. We will continue our negotiations with the Piegan Indians. If there are deficiencies in environmental mitigation, we will look at those deficiencies and we will address those deficiencies. Understanding we've already spent upwards of $20 million on environmental mitigation with respect to the Old Man River Dam. But if this member is so concerned, Mr. Speaker, about the Old Man River Dam, I challenge him to go down to southern Alberta, stand on top of that dam and say, tear it down. He wouldn't do it.
Calgary Northwest. Order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we understand the Novotel deal was signed about 2 weeks ago. And it's interesting how at least signed in principle, it's interesting how the government is quick to announce deals that attempt to make them look good, but they sure drag their feet on some that don't make them look so good. My question is to the Treasurer today. Will the Treasurer admit today that the delay in the announcement on this fiasco of Novotel is nothing more than political manipulation, extending even to the point, Mr. Speaker, of altering tomorrow's legislative agenda, preventing opposition members from asking questions in question period on this deal?
Hear, hear.
Supplementary question.
To reply, so I'll try something a little different then. The Minister has talked that $566 million has been lost so far. There's a $525 million loan guarantee. Will the Treasurer advise the House on the $525 million loan guarantee? Is it provided for in the agreement that the Alberta taxpayers are going to be off the hook and no more money than we've already lost is going to be lost under the loan agreement?
Mr. Speaker, now that the member recognizes the quorum of the House, I'll certainly try and provide him with the information, but I will not answer questions which are based on those sort of insulting comments, which are derogatory to all members and certainly reflect, I'm sure, on the view that the students hold of the Liberal Party across the way. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me simply say to the Legislative Assembly that my colleague, the Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunications, in filing the documents that my colleague did today, has made full disclosure And that full disclosure reflects our best estimate as to what the total losses will be. Now, we have been very small c conservative in judging these losses. That is to say, we probably have overestimated the losses for purposes of disclosure here today, Mr. Speaker. And I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that our best guess today, on a very modest basis, working in association with the management committee, with the management of Novotel companies, and with those people who've done due diligence inside the company, that the loss itself will be of the order of $566.5 million, and that, to our best estimate, Mr. Speaker, is what the total losses to the people of Alberta will be on this transaction.
Pincher Creek. Order, please, honourable member. You had your questions earlier. Order, please. Order. Edmonton Glengarry, please. Pincher Creek, Crow's Nest.
Mr. Speaker, the Old Man Dam is a needed project to assure a secure and dependable supply of water for southern Alberta, similar to the benefits enjoyed by the citizens of Calgary and Edmonton, who have several on-stream storage reservoirs upstream of their cities. As such, southern Albertans welcome the federal government's rejection, and I say rejection, of the federal IRP panel's recommendation to decommission the Old Man Dam. My question is to the Minister of Public Works, Supplies and Services. The federal IRP panel suggests insufficient mitigation work has been done. Would the Minister outline to the Assembly the extensive Old Man Dam environmental mitigation efforts which have been undertaken to date with the advice of the local advisory committee, and what the government's commitment is to ongoing mitigation work, particularly as it relates to the fishery resource?
Mr. Speaker, over recent years we have issued our policies with respect to mitigation, and mitigation, of course, means putting in proper order. Our policies with respect to wildlife mitigation, Mr. Speaker, fisheries mitigation, Mr. Speaker, historical resources mitigation, Mr. Speaker, archaeology are very important. Mr. Speaker, the echo in the background for those who are listening on television comes from the member from Jasper Place, and perhaps the member from Jasper Place has not read Alberta Hansard. Thank heavens we do have in an open government like ours. We were the first government to bring in a printed Hansard. If I'd refer the member to Jasper Place and others to Hansard dated May 19, 1992, specifically to page 978, when the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services brought his estimates to this House, and the opposition members, 2 hours talking about estimates other than those of the Minister of Public Works, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, in the estimates themselves, vote 4.810 has an allocation of dollars which is for mitigation, wildlife and fisheries habitat monitoring, wildlife and fisheries species monitoring, water quality monitoring, the riparian vegetation monitoring, wetland projects construction, and the monitoring of mercury levels in fish. That's part of the mitigation process that we are currently doing on behalf of other departments within the government. Over the next several years, Mr. Chairman, these responsibilities will be duly transferred to other departments of government, particularly Alberta Environment, but at the moment we're dealing with them. And Mr. Speaker, our plan, as announced, always was to continue mitigation and improvements through to 1996, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question to the Minister of Culture and Multiculturalism. Although the Old Man Dam is not located on the Pagan Indian Reserve, extensive archaeological work has been done. I wonder if the Minister could outline to the Assembly the extent of that archaeological investigation, and as to whether or not any sacred native sites or burial sites were discovered in this archaeological work.
Mr. Speaker, as a result of the government decision to build the Old Man Dam, there was an extensive scientific, historic, archaeological, and paleontological investigation that took place. In fact, this is the largest exercise of its kind ever undertaken in Alberta. It covered something in the order of 7 years. In excess of $3.2 million was spent on the archaeological work alone. In addition to that, some $750,000 was made available to the Pagan Nation to answer the questions that they had with respect to the impacts of the Old Man Dam on their culture and their religion and their way of life. After this most extensive discovery, there was a lot discovered, a 9,000-year-old campsite, for example, an 8,000-year-old buffalo kill site. But, Mr. Speaker, with all those studies, 7 years of intensive work, in all that time, no medicine wheels, no rock art, no Vision Quest sites, no prehistoric or historic human remains, no physical, scientific, or archaeological traces of any kind were discovered of any sacred or religious sites anywhere behind the Old Man Dam.
Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The announcement today regarding the sale of some of Novotel assets says the Alberta government has created a holding company to administer systems financing loans held by Novatel's existing systems customers. We don't know what losses might potentially come from those loans, but we do know that this government has used holding companies in the past to hide losses and to postpone writing down losses. Would the provincial treasurer explain whether the hundreds of millions of dollars in financing loans are excluded from the estimated $566 million losses in the sale of Novotel?
Good question.
Speaker, what I have said, and I'll simply confirm it for the fourth time, I think, that all the losses that we can now contemplate or calculate or confirm have been taken by the government, and that amount of loss includes the losses on all assets of the entity, including the so-called systems loans. And specifically with respect to the systems loans, we have provided, if you allow me work from memory here, approximately 25% provision on those loan losses. And that is in line with, in fact, what we expect to be, after some consideration, the experience on those kinds of investments.
Mr. Speaker, this is the only government in Canada, in the world, that could bungle and lose millions of dollars in the sale of a profitable monopoly.
Got that right.
The reason that this government owned Novotel in the first place was because they had to buy it back from AGT because of badly mismanaged and mishandled information in the preliminary prospectus. Given that this government has made only about $300 and some million in the sale of AGT without Novotel, and that they've just admitted to losing $566 million at least on the sale of Novotel, would the provincial treasurer confirm that the Alberta government did not get fair market value for the privatization and sale of AGT?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, let me remind the members and all Albertans that on the privatization of the Alberta government telephone interest in TELUS, or the AGT telephone company, that in fact the province did make something close to $500 million pure profit on the sale of those assets. And that goes a long ways to mitigating the loss that we're now experiencing in Novotel. Well, let me also express, Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt that the government has the same sense of regret and disappointment and whatever else you want to say about this with respect to the loss of Novotel. But let's remember how this structure was put in place. The structure, Mr. Speaker, was one whereby it was a joint venture up until 1989 by a private sector company and AGT board commission, and they were operating in an arm's length basis from the province, away from the government. And Mr. Speaker, I must say that we were not at all involved in the management, the day-to-day operations, or in fact the management control systems of that entity. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, while I do not say that the government is without some fault here, because of course we are the government and AGT is our responsibility, we fully acknowledge that. We can say that in fact the AGT Commission is still in place. In fact, Mr. Speaker, most of the management decisions, the day-to-day operations, and the long-term strategy of this entity were handled by others other than the government, people appointed in arm's length positions. And it's for that reason, Mr. Speaker, that I'll direct their attention to the letter that the Premier sent to Mr. Salmon, the provincial auditor. Because in that letter, Mr. Speaker, we specifically ask the Auditor General to provide details to us as to the main reasons for the errors contained in the TELUS prospectus. For example, we ask about the question of the acquisition of Nova's interest in Novotel in 1989, Mr. Speaker. And further, we want to go on to talk about the nature of the losses incurred over the course of the period of ownership by the province through AGT. Mr. Speaker, the province itself is asking these questions. The province itself would like to have reasonable explanations. The province itself believes that something went wrong along the line. We want to find out, Mr. Speaker. We think the best explanation can be provided to us by the provincial auditor, a non-biased servant of this assembly, and he will draw together all the reports, all the information that he has, provide a consolidated view so we can answer these questions specifically, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Provincial Treasurer. Thank you. Edmonton Highlands, followed by Edmonton Meadowlark.
Well, Mr. Speaker, while the provincial treasurer is very successful in giving away the assets of the province, I can tell people of Alberta that there are some private sector interests that are getting lots of money out of our public sector healthcare system. I'd like to name just one, Mr. Speaker, Marriott Corporation, huge hotel chain based out of the United States, multinational corporation, now admitting that they've got 23 contracts in public facilities around the province, including in active or acute care and long-term care facilities in the province, Mr. Speaker. Now, our Canada Health Act says that health is delivered on a not-for-profit basis, and I know the pat answers of the health minister, but I'd like to ask her directly, will she now tell hospitals and long-term care facilities in Alberta to stop contracting out to private sector operators who are making a good profit off of Alberta taxpayer dollars?
That's right.
The short answer, Mr. Speaker, is no. What we do ask of hospital boards and what they are compelled to do is to ensure that they get the best value out of the dollars we dedicate to health in this province. We don't direct them to contract out nor not to contract out, but rather to get the best value for the resources that are available to them. It is not in violation of the Canada Health Act because the workers that are being affected by these decisions are workers in laundry, dietary, and housekeeping areas, so in fact it doesn't violate one of the 5 principles of the Canada Health Act, this one being public administration.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the minister keeps saying how she's got to be responsible for the tax dollars, how she's got to streamline the health system, make a transition to a better way. Mr. Speaker, giving away tax dollars to American multinationals is not a better way. Why won't the minister establish guidelines for hospitals so that they do not contract out these services to American multinationals for profit?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, I expect hospital boards to get the best value for the health dollar, and I respect, unlike the New Democrats, their ability to do just that. I am not about to tell a hospital board how to do their job. We entrust that administration to hospital boards across the province.
Edmonton Meadowlark.
Back to the dam, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the federal panel concludes, and I quote, that the environmental, social, and economic costs of the project are not balanced by corresponding benefits and finds that the project is unacceptable. Does the Minister of the Environment have any idea what will be the extra costs of the mitigative measures required by the panel, and does he know what these costs are going to do to the cost versus benefit of that dam project?
No, we don't know the cost. We do know how much we've already spent, and it's upwards of $20 million on environmental mitigation, and we feel that that is a very, very significant amount indeed. As I indicated to the honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place, our officials will be discussing with federal officials next week the recommendations contained in the ERP panel's report, and we will be deciding in due course how to address those recommendations, and if indeed there are further measures that need to be taken to mitigate environmental problems related to the dam.
Mr. Speaker, the report goes on to say that other wildlife concerns, such as the effects of the dam on many other species or on genetic diversity, were inadequately addressed or not addressed at all by the proponent. In light of this finding by the panel, struck by none other than this government's federal Tory cousins, how can the minister continue to argue with any credibility or any belief that he has credibility that in fact his government has done the necessary environmental reviews, has done the necessary environmental studies, and has taken the necessary environmental mitigative measures?
Very simply, I'll explain to the honourable member for Edmonton Meadowlark what I outlined to the honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place, and that is that there was extensive environmental work done prior and during construction of the dam, and there will be further work done, and is planned to be done after construction and operation of the dam. Quite simply, Mr. Speaker, there was an agreement in place between the province of Alberta and the government of Canada. That agreement simply said that if we're satisfied with your environmental mitigation, if we're satisfied with your environmental impact assessment process, you submit it to, after submitting it to us, we'll look at it and we'll sign off on it. And they did. They signed off on it. They told us at that time that we played by all the rules of the game of the day. And we did. And we're satisfied that we did everything humanly possible to mitigate the environmental concerns that were expressed at that particular time. We did not commission this report. This report was commissioned by the federal government. It's their report. How they react to the recommendations is entirely up to them, but we'll be glad to discuss it with them and cooperate.
Order, please, honourable member. Order. Order, please. Order yourself as well, please, honourable member. The chair notes, as honourable members are well aware themselves, that there were a number of important issues today, and therefore some of the questions as well as some of the answers went on at great length. Nevertheless, 10 members were not able to get into question period today, partly because of the length of the preambles, partly because of the answers, but also partly because of an undue number of interruptions. And again, the chair points out the members are wasting their own time in question period. Order, please, honourable member. There's no point for you to interrupt either. At this time, might we revert briefly to the introduction of special guests? Opposed? Carried. In this order, Drumheller, Panoka-Rimby, Stony Plain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce to you and through you to all members of the Assembly 10 grade 9 students from the Rocky View School. These eager, enthusiastic students are accompanied by their teacher, Robert Proctor, and parent Dorothy Stinn. I'd like to ask them to rise in the public gallery and receive the usual warm welcome of the Assembly.
Panoka-Rimby.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon it's my pleasure to introduce through you to members of the Assembly 60 students from the elementary school located in the friendly international town of Rimby. Mr. Speaker, they are accompanied by teachers James Moore and Valerie Warren, and parents and helpers, Mrs. Giesbrick, Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Edge, Mrs. Jordan, Mr. and Mrs. Reeves, Ms. Aitken, Mrs. Service, and Mrs. Jensen. Mr. Speaker, they are seated in the members' gallery. I hope they are enjoying their field trip, and I would ask them to stand and receive the traditional warm welcome of the Assembly.
Stony Plain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to introduce to you and to the members of the Assembly 28 members of the English as a Second Language program from AVC on behalf of my colleague and seatmate, the member from Edmonton Kingsway. They're here to enlighten their views on how the legislature works, at least in question period, and I'd ask them to rise and they're accompanied by teachers Kathy Black and Marg Armstrong, and I'd ask them to rise and receive the welcome of the Assembly.
Before we get around to orders of the day, there's a procedural matter which needs to be addressed in the House, mainly for the information of all members. At the end of yesterday afternoon, a series of events out of the ordinary occurred. First, no concluding remarks were made by the minister whose estimates were being discussed. Events were moving at a fast pace within a very short time frame. The vote was begun on an item-by-item or element basis rather than on a vote-by-vote basis, therefore consuming more time than usual. An intervention by the Deputy Government House Leader to stop the clock was attempted. However, a committee of the House does not have such power. The chairman of that committee attempted to return to the generally approved format of a vote-by-vote basis for votes 3, 4, and 5. The committee agreed. However, a point of order was raised, which cannot be dealt with until the proceeding is completed. A further attempt to stop the clock was made. Procedurally, it was still not acceptable. The deputy chairman of committees then continued the vote. The estimates were moved to be reported, and that was carried. The Speaker then entered the House at approximately 5:37 p.m., well after the normal Wednesday adjournment hour of 5:30. The deputy chairman of committees was recognized to make the committee report, and then the chair refused to put the motion in order to hear a point of order as raised by the member. The chair pointed out Beauchene 822, quote, procedural difficulties which arise in committees ought to be settled in the committee and not in the House, close of quote. The chair could not put the question since the time was well past the standing order requirement of Wednesday's adjournment. Therefore, the House adjourned at 5:42 p.m. The chair admonished the House, the government bench, and the deputy government House leader. The chair now apologizes to the government bench, the deputy government House leader, as the procedural difficulty arose in the Committee of Supply and not in the House. The chair also points out that there's no doubt this is not likely to occur in the future on either a Wednesday or on a Friday. Orders of the day.
Written questions.
Deputy government House leader.